Welcome to the PTS podcast where the Poulters talk sports. This is Paul, joined by my brother Daniel, as always. Today we are here to bring you a jam-packed first episode. On the slate today, we've got winners and losers from the 2024 NFL Draft, as well as a trip to the bar at the end of the episode. So, if we want to get things kicked off, go ahead and give me, Daniel, your first winner from the NFL Draft.
Now, you see here, sometimes the NFL draft, it can be very easy to tell who's a winner and loser. This year, a little bit more jumbled, a little bit more all over the place. But I can tell you one thing. The Las Vegas Raiders, and
They had a good night.
I will admit biases here. I think if they had just done that the first round pick, it's an A draft.
You do love yourself some Brock Bowers, huh?
I am a biased man towards Brock Bowers.
And why is that?
Now, let me tell you, little behind the curtain. For all 4 years of Brock Bowers' time at Napa High School, I covered him personally, followed him around, watched his ascent into a 4-star prospect, and then go eventually to the University of Georgia.
Now, so a little biased. Did he play tight end originally in high school, or did he convert later?
The answer is somewhat. They very quickly, going from his sophomore year to his junior year, his team was coming off an 0-10 season. They were very bad. A good old kind of a school-based scandal kind of wiped the whole program out.
That'll do it.
And then you just got the whispers that, hey, did you guys hear about this thing that's coming out of Napa? I'm like, Napa doesn't get football players.
They sure don't.
Napa's known, and Kirby Smart even said so when he talked about recruiting Brock Bowers. He's like, I don't go to
Georgia
Napa.
Head coach, right?
Yeah, Georgia head coach. I don't go to Napa for football players. And you'd be right.
Yep.
Brock Bowers is the one exception. Brock is... I watched him against... I drove out 2.5, 3 hours to Middletown. Little tiny little football power in the middle of nowhere.
Yep.
Type of places where they got like people on horseback going around the football field. We talking deep Friday night football. Bowers took a squib kick on the opening kickoff, went around the 2 guys of his own team instantly, and this is a kid who's like at the time was like 6'3", 220 something pounds, 25 pounds, 250. Gazelles around 2 people, stiff arms 1 kid, hurdles the next dude, and then goes for a 75-yard touchdown. And that's all I needed to see. I was like, you are a Division I football player. Congratulations. Well, and then he decided to start at Georgia as a freshman, and you go, oh. And then you may be asking,
program to get a starting spot.
And especially it's like the kids from the West Coast usually, like Najee Harris, running back for the Pittsburgh Steelers, is one of the best running backs I've ever seen in person. And he had to wait 2 to 3 years in the SEC. You just don't start, especially at tight end. It's just kind of like, get in line. I was like, maybe he'll play his senior year and he'll be lucky. And then he's the best tight end in college football the last 3 years.
Do you have any concern about how the Raiders might utilize him? Obviously, they have Michael Mayer, who was pretty successful last year. Do you think there's any reason that, maybe Mayer could be on the chopping block, or do you think they're going to try and run more 2 tight end sets, things like that?
I think how you see it is Mayer is your traditional tight end. He is going to be your 6th offensive lineman.
Like an inline blocking tight end.
He's the things that Bowers is not 1,000% ad, which is like he is Bowers is a willing blocker. He's a good blocker. He's not a George Kittle blocker.
Sure.
But the thing is though, you have him at a tight end, and then you have Bowers, put him in the slot. Like you can put him in the X. You can make it be a gashing Gronk type tight end. You could also just as they did at Napa High School. They just kind of put him in the backfield and said, "Here, take the football."
And it's not
Like
like the
it,
Raiders have running backs that are going to demand carries. I think the top of the depth chart right now is Zamir White, who is just not what we would consider a top of the line starter. If they still had Josh Jacobs, obviously that would be
yeah.
different.
I was a little
But
surprised that the Raiders didn't really do anything running back, but like Brock Bowers, you shouldn't keep him as he is a tight end. He will not play tight end.
sure, I think some
He is
people in
going
the
to play
business
wide
call,
receiver, running back, screens,
yeah.
anything they want to do for the Raiders. He will do it. This is not a luxury pick. This is imagine that this is you drafting a star wide receiver. This is also you drafting a left tackle. This is also you drafting Debo Samuel.
Yeah, I've heard players like this called offensive weapons because they kind of, flow from spot to spot. They're not necessarily confined to one role, similar to a Debo. Um, in terms of my number three, because we wanted to do this in ascending order, in terms of how good we thought their drafts were, I have the LA Chargers, which was a bit surprising. I was a little concerned how Jim Harbaugh would want to build a football team, coming off that
Let me
championship in Michigan.
while you go on. Let me find that quote. It is the best quote in the entire
Is it
draft.
about JJ McCarthy being the best
No,
quarterback? No.
no. Keep
Um,
going. Keep going.
so they held the fifth overall pick, and there was some interest in terms of whether or not they would end up trading that pick. Whether or not a team would come up for JJ McCarthy, maybe come up for a Malik Neighbors, something like that. Um, but what they did was they took Joe Alt, the best offensive lineman in the draft. Questions of whether or not he'll play tackle or guard, but he can kind of fit anywhere, similar to the other tackle they actually have, Rashawn Slater. And the way Harbaugh's going to want to run his team is smash mouth football. They got rid of all their weapons because they had to reset some of the salary cap issues,
Whoa,
and
whoa,
in
whoa.
doing that, oh,
We got
oh,
to we got to
oh,
talk.
I forgot. Yes, yes, I
We got to
remember the
talk
quote
about
now.
what do you mean they
Yeah,
got rid of weapons?
yeah, they drafted
They
a weapon.
they
Yeah.
drafted a weapon.
Now, don't get
But
me wrong. I don't think that's incorrect.
no, it's not incorrect, and you know that every single high school offensive line coach in the next 6 years is going to have this quote, like the first day
On
of
top
practice.
of the clipboard,
So
like,
it's like, I know you didn't get selected to be a wide receiver, son.
but you're still a
You're
weapon out
you're
there.
a weapon.
Uh,
Context quote. Context quote. Jim Harbaugh, after talking about all the fans have been wanting weapons.
yeah,
I know the question is going to come up about weapons. We look at offensive linemen as weapons,
and I
which
don't
is the most
disagree.
khakis Jim Harbaugh, I live in an RV statement he has ever made. Uh, and I'm excited, and I feel so bad for the media in San Diego. Los Angeles. It's the same thing. You know what I meant.
The what's interesting is one of the reasons I really like the Chargers draft is just the way the draft broke. And what I mean by that is
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
they took offensive tackle at 5, but they came back in the second round, were able to pick up Lad McConkey, wide receiver, I believe, out of Georgia. Um,
Yes.
and I think that's much better based off of how many offensive linemen went, because we had a record breaking number of offensive linemen go in the first round. I think it was much better to grab the top tackle and grab the wide receiver, because some of the wide receivers fell comparatively to the other way around. So I really prefer that over taking Malik Neighbors. They took Junior Colson from Michigan, who Harbaugh obviously knows really well, is going to lead that linebacking core. And on top of that, I actually really like their seventh round. They picked up, I believe, the son of Jerry Rice, as well as.
We got to talk about this
Hold on.
because I
They also picked up another wide receiver, and based off of what they did in terms of, trading Keelan Allen, releasing Mike Williams, doing those things, I thought taking, dart throws at wide receiver towards the end of the draft, when we've seen a lot of late round wide receiver talent develop into quality starters, I thought that was a great way to go about it.
I think that logic is sound if it wasn't Brendan Rice.
Sure. Is he not good?
uh he has no separation, and
Is he
he's just
running off name?
he's running off name, yeah.
Now, to be
And
fair,
also the
growing
USC
up
didn't
growing up in an
ha-
NFL household, he will know how the process works in the NFL. He's
This
not
is
going to have that
true.
much of a learning curve. He's probably very committed in terms of his ability to practice and things like that. That's what you see a lot of times with NFL households. I mean, you saw Marvin Harrison go junior, go fourth overall, but he's obviously a special talent. But I would rather take
Yeah.
a late dart throw at a wide receiver than an offensive lineman. So I think they managed it well.
It's the same type of scenario that we'll get to probably later about Jeremiah Trotter Jr. going to the
Yep.
Eagles, where do I expect him to play like a single down? No.
No.
But was the draft that good for the Eagles that they didn't care and they could do it a wasteful nostalgia pick?
Yes.
Yes.
Speaking
So
of which, who is your second winner?
all right. And the more I keep thinking on who my second um winner is, I and this is going to be like a boomer bust selection. I went with
Sure.
the Chicago Bears just because of their first round. They only had 5 picks this entire draft. They're a team that needs a lot of pieces. They need so much to help that program and just like the entire city. And they basically took the the singer formerly known as Prince and then selected him first overall.
Yep.
And I like Caleb Williams, not as much as a couple other quarterbacks potentially, but there is one thing you cannot deny is the guy makes plays, and a lot of people are going to be like too excited for that from the college to the pro level. But they got him a whole bunch of weapons. They got him a new running back. They got him my favorite wide receiver in this draft, Redmond Odunze. I'm
Really, over
very
Marvin Harrison?
yes, I absolutely
He's good.
love this wide receiver. There wasn't a single time where I watched a Washington game this season that it wasn't. And yes, Washington was loaded all over the front of that offense, but he made insane catch after insane catch, separation, speed. He's everything I would want in a wide receiver, star wide receiver. And then also, he looks like he already has a connection from before the draft of both of them wanting to play together. It just makes sense. Yes, they selected the punter in a 4th round. It's the Bears. This draft for me is 2 players, and the rest of it I don't care. Like
Quality over
they got
quantity.
a nice offensive tackle from Yale, but basically in any normal draft, the amount of offensive tackles that went in this draft would be in like not selected or like the 7th rounder. So like for me, any offensive lineman past the 2nd round is just a dart throw
Yep.
by every franchise.
Yep, I agree completely. Just the sheer amount of talent that was taken in the first round at that position really makes it so you're really just betting on a trait. You find one trait from an alignment that you think could potentially help them make it. In terms of
That's
my,
I almost put the Lions there because of
I love
their
the Lions draft, by the way. They would be an honorable mention for me. Lions and
yeah
Jaguars were two of my honorable mentions for the draft.
the especially as for the Lions. Like, here's a good chance he never plays in the NFL.
The kid out of Canada.
The kid out of Canada who's like 6'8", 360 pounds, and ran like a 4.8.
You know what's crazy is the Lions have the luxury to do that, though. The Lions have the luxury to do that, which we would have never said in the last 3 years, that they have accrued enough talent by the drafting of Brad Holmes that they actually are able to, take a bit of a more risky pick. And I think it was an earlier round, right? It was like the third or fourth round. It wasn't,
It
like
was
a
a
crazy.
4th round.
Yeah. So,
I last thing on the Lions because they're kind of like my 2A pick.
uh huh.
Um, Vaki from
The safety out of Utah.
safety out of Utah,
Yeah.
but he's also a running back
Running
and a
back.
kick returner.
He was announced as a running
he
back
he
at
was
the end of the
announced
draft.
as a running back, which is very worrying because he should probably not be a running back. But another more fun facts covered him 4 or 5 times where he played for Liberty High School in Brentwood, California, before going to Utah. But I saw him play locally, And I thought his quarterback, who was going to Oregon on scholarship, was going to be the one who'd make it into this NFL draft. But it was always kind because he was so small,
Yeah.
but he was such a player. It was it's one of those highlight cases of, dude, if you were 4 inches taller and you're like 6'2", you're going in the first round type of player. So I think the Lions did a really, really good job. They said, hey, our cornerbacks suck. Let's draft cornerback 24th overall, cornerback 61st overall, safety 132 overall.
I
Throw up your
get it.
hands and say,
I get it.
let's go
That
for
D
it.
line is good. That offensive line is good. Weapons are good. Like that team is good. Um,
Lions were gonna be nice,
my,
unless their coach goes psychopathic. But
I think they're fine. The second winner for me is actually a team that I have not loved their drafts recently, but I really enjoyed this one, and it was actually the New Orleans Saints. So, um,
mm,
the Saints are the team most often to trade up in the first round. They seemingly do it all the time. They traded up for Chris Olave, that worked out. They traded up
true.
for Marcus Davenport, that did not work out.
Ooh.
Um, they've done a series of trades, but this time they stood and picked in the first round for a player I thought they would have to trade up for in Tulisa Fuaga. Um, Another offensive lineman, you can see the theme of things I enjoy in teams is building from the inside out. And again, given how the board broke, the fact that they were able to snag Fuaga at 14 and then in the second round pick up Kool-Aid McKinstry, who many people had as a round one corner, the ability to potentially solve two major needs is huge. And not only that, they didn't have a third or fourth rounder, but they were still able to manage to pick up Spencer Rattler. Now, I'm not a big Spencer Rattler guy. Don't, I'm not saying he's the next, Tom Brady late round pick, next Brock Purdy even, but a team that has a quarterback in Derek Carr who's fine. I don't think he's amazing. I think at times he's actually undervalued locally when he was, in Oakland. Um, but coming away with two starters in the first two rounds that both could have been first round picks, and then taking a flyer on a quarterback with who seems to have at least some decent upside. He came in as one of the top recruits. Um, I think that makes a lot of sense, and I really love their draft.
My biggest thing, I love their first two picks, just because watching locally, Oregon State come to town a couple times, uh, all the offensive linemen in the Pac-12, RIP. I really, really liked Kool-Aid. Can't go wrong with a cornerback named Kool-Aid. Uh, we used to take those. I'm not the biggest, like, in a couple years when they make the Taylor Swift Travis Kelsey movie,
Yep,
Spencer Rattler will be cast as Patrick Mahomes when he's flamed out of the NFL. This
it's
is it's
possible.
perfect. It's perfect casting. It is
They are
like
eerily similar.
like especially when you're having no draft picks. I think they did really, really well to maximize what they could. But it's hard for me to make them a winner when you just have such low variety where it's just like
Sure.
what do we have? But like I really love their first two picks. You can't complain if you're New Orleans, especially like seeing what some of their other competition in that division may have done. um I think the Saints are fine. I think the
Yeah,
Saints are fine.
if I were a expansion franchise, I would want to be in the NFC South. Um,
uh,
so
that's
that leaves
factual.
just your number one team in terms of winners from the NFL draft, and that would be
My number one team, by a landslide, not counting my self biases towards a certain bird based East Pennsylvanian franchises. I, how are the Steelers allowed to get away with this draft?
that was
Um,
insane. That draft was so good.
the and like this is the most Steelers draft that they could have. First of all, they get an absolute like road grinding offensive tackle from Washington.
Good old Troy
He's
Fatanu.
yeah, he has some funky arm things for an offensive lineman, which I'm not the biggest fan of. But it was a guy who they have found tweets from like 7 to 8 years ago of him being like, God, I hate Tom Brady, and I wish this like I need the Steelers to just like win this, please. So
That guy's
they
a
did
Yinzer through and through.
they they got one of them Steelers, eh? Uh, then they picked a center, in round two.
JPJ, right?
Hey, what Zach Frazier?
Oh no, they went Zach Frazier. That's right. That's right.
Yeah, because I was gonna talk about the guy from that went to the Raiders, the Oregon's center.
Yeah, that's the guy I was
But
thinking.
this guy, he was a high school state wrestling champion who's something like 107-2 or something.
If I'm drafting a center or guard, they have to have one state wrestling championship. That is a
It's
requirement.
true. And this guy, literally, it was either last year or the year before, he broke his leg at the on the game ending drive. He broke his leg and then like dog crawled with one leg off the field so they didn't have to
Take a
take a
timeout.
penalty or a timeout.
No, this was
And
my favorite interior offensive lineman in the draft, just by pure guts.
and then so you already you already said our awful offensive line. Here's two absolute just freaks.
To
Here
add
you
on to
go.
Broderick Jones, who they took last year.
hmm And then Roman Wilson, their third round pick, wide receiver. I'm not the biggest. He wasn't one of the wide receivers I was like dying for people to get. I really much more like Troy Franklin of Oregon, but
Yeah.
that's also some more biases because he was local. But I also think he's just an absolute stud for the Broncos.
Also, keep
Um,
in mind the Steelers have had a great track record of second and third round wide receivers making an impact. Deontay Johnson, Antonio Brown was a later round pick. They picked Chase Claypool, who did well before he kind of completely
yeah,
fell out of the league.
the especially the really nice thing about Roman Wilson is he kind of just catches everything.
Yeah, George Pickens.
Especially for two quarterbacks that are going to be kind of like trying to find someone to throw to that they can trust and not get kicked out of the league. It's pretty, the most their most the most Trent Baalke pick of this NFL draft was their last third round pick, which may be like their best pick. Peyton Wilson from North Carolina
Yes,
State is
yes, the
my
linebacker.
favorite. It's so frustrating. He is my by far favorite linebacker in this draft. I think he is a insane Steeler. He if he works out, he'll be one of those players where people go, "Why do we have so many concerns?" And then you list the number of injury concerns that he has, and then you go, "Okay, I
Okay, that
understand
makes
why he
sense.
was
Yeah,
37th." He doesn't have one of his ACLs. It doesn't
that
exist.
that's unfortunate.
It's been removed.
I didn't know you
not
could do
not
that.
repaired. Not repaired
Frankly,
twice.
didn't know you could do that.
He plays with no ACL,
Okay.
which
Now this
not ideal.
unfortunately reminds me of a player. A couple of years ago, there was a kid coming out of Alabama called Terrell Lewis, who I was watching. Some analysts at the time basically say he has first round traits and seventh round to undrafted medical because he had two microfractures on the same knee. Um, I think I speak for everybody when we say we hope for the best for him. We hope he has a healthy career and he's able to shine.
Mm-hmm.
But I certainly would understand GM's passing on him if there's that many issues. Like I get it. I get it.
Oh yeah, no. There's a reason he fell to 97 when he was the consensus number one, if healthy.
Yeah.
So it's and with the Steelers, like a third end of the third round compensatory pick.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have a starting middle linebacker for 10 years.
It's a great pick. AFC
Steelers.
North middle linebackers.
Now talk about better birds.
To talk about, unfortunately, my number one team would be your favorite team, the Philadelphia Eagles, who have been on the verge the last couple of years. They've had a couple struggles. Now
Maybe.
last year was weird. Like you guys were on fire.
Yeah.
Second half was just a complete disaster. Now we both think that Jalen Hurts was more hurt than he let on, and that was one of the main reasons that they stumbled. However, um,
Coaching still.
that's true. But where there is no question marks is how good Howie Roseman has been as a GM recently.
Let him cook.
His his
Let
ability
Howie
to
cook.
his ability to trade for AJ Brown, his ability to draft last year. They've been just drafting the Georgia defense for the last couple of years. They this
It's not a
draft
bad bet.
this draft they stayed where they were and they were able to land the top corner in the draft in most people's eyes in Quinion Mitchell. Um, what's crazy about that is that was arguably their biggest need, so much so that they doubled down on it to trade in front of my Green Bay Packers and pick Cooper DeJean, who I thought was the single best pick in the whole draft in
Oh,
terms of
that's a
value,
bad
in
old
terms of
white boy right
in
there.
terms of willingness to trade in front of a team you know is going to take him. The willingness to do that, I thought that was incredible. Now, I'm actually slightly higher on Jeremiah Trotter Jr. than you are. I think he could be a rotational player, and if you get a rotational player that late, you're doing well. But it was similar to your Raiders pick, where the first two picks made me think that they had already stolen the show. My 1B to the Eagles would have been the Steelers. That's how good I thought their draft was. So I think the state of
Yeah.
Pennsylvania did really well. Um, they came out ahead. Now, unfortunately, not everybody had a great draft, and that's where we have to transition into some losers. I'm gonna go with you first because my second loser is a little. Both my picks are a little spicy for different reasons. I will go ahead and have you reveal your second biggest loser of the draft weekend.
All right. So this was a little tough for me just because there wasn't an a obvious just
I would
just
say not a lot of
absolute.
teams were egregious this year. Like a lot of
Yeah.
teams were pretty middle of the road. And to be fair, it's hard to draft negatively until you actually see how the players play in the NFL. So,
Yeah. This was a type of draft where when we looked at it, when we talked to people, a lot of teams were like, yeah, there's like 65 players that I want to draft.
yep,
And then after that, I have to draft 7 more.
yeah,
So it was kind of hard. There was no like, oh, they messed up because there was so many good players available. It was kind of
sure.
like, well, Troy Franklin shouldn't have gone to the 4th round.
That
Stuff
still
like
makes no sense to me.
stuff like that, where it's just like, sure, you all made mistakes. You all made mistakes. Um, but for me, it was my second loser. Um, was the Buffalo Bills, and this is kind of like a compensatory type of full off season award
Okay.
because like you trade Diggs
Yep.
and like you replace him
With Keon Coleman,
with no one
Curtis Samuel.
who's like if you had traded for Ayuk,
I'm
Debo Samuel.
surprised that neither of them got traded, but we'll get to that in the bar.
We'll get to that in a second. But you you kind of said goodbye wide receiver for our star quarterback who really could use a good wide
A weapon.
receiver,
Yep.
and then you did nothing. And then you got a utility safety. And then you got a running back you didn't need. And then a defensive tackle that was kind of bad. And then I think that makes it the reason they're on this list. You traded with the
Kansas City.
Chiefs
I know. I
for
was
an
stunned.
actual
Good
like
wide
if the Bills
receiver.
just get Xavier Worthy, like yes, he's a fast guy in snow. That's probably
Sure.
not. He's a small guy in snow. That seems like a bad
Kansas
idea.
City
It's
can
not
be
very
cold.
Buffalo.
Sure.
But Xavier Worthy is right there. Fun
Yeah.
fact: another player I covered when he was in high school at the Central Valley. Went to Central High School in Fresno. Absolute stud then. Lost his senior year to COVID.
Yep.
He like it's insane that you're like, we need a wide receiver. You draft a wide receiver. You trade the better wide receiver to your arch rival who desperately needs a wide receiver of the fast variety. And then you get like burnt mayonnaise as a wide receiver.
I thought it was obscene that they traded with them. Like that's the
Like
equivalent of the Packers trading with the Bears. Like now,
it's like it's like trading with them is fine, but it's like a good
no,
example
it's
is like
not.
the
You
like
don't trade with the Chiefs.
I get that, but I'm saying like a good example is like the 49ers and the Chiefs later did a trade
Sure.
where the 49ers equivalently said the offensive tackle from BYU kick rocks.
Yeah.
We do not want you.
Yeah.
We could think of 1,000 things we'd rather do than take you. And so you traded one spot with the Chiefs. Like so the Chiefs got the offensive lineman they want, and you get some
Right,
other
and you
stuff.
weren't going to pick them anyway. Like I get that, but
And like
now there have been actually recently more trades within the division. For example, the NFC North, my division, there's been
mm-hmm.
a ton of trades recently, actually.
Trade was
So
strange.
the Packers traded with the Vikings in order to pick Christian Watson in the second round. The
True.
Packers traded with the Lions and pissed me off because they let them pick Brian Branch. The Lions and the
True.
Vikings made that huge trade where the Lions traded up from 32, the pick they got from Matt Stafford trade. They swapped up to the 12th pick to pick Jamison Williams. Um,
True.
Famously, the Cowboys and the Eagles swapped picks, so the Eagles could pick Devontae Smith. Now, the reason that happened was because the Giants were in between, so it was going to a division rival anyway. But so
It's
it is more
true. It
common.
was quite
What
nice
is
of
not
Jerry.
common is trading with the one team you cannot beat, and that's what the Bills did. And I was flabbergasted. So I am with you 100% on the Bills
Yeah,
being a
because
winner.
like the second that you're in the AFC Championship game, and then Xavier Worthy's gonna hit like an 85-yard,
He's gonna go for a
like
buck 20 and a touchdown against
like
you.
a pit, like an absolute piss missile of a touchdown, you'll be like, oh,
You know what the worst part is?
oh,
They traded to the Chiefs so they could pick him, and the Bills have no secondary because they cut all those players for cap purposes. So now you're gonna get burnt.
yeah,
Speaking of
barbecue
burning,
chicken.
spicy takes. I have one of your winners as one of my losers. I have the Chicago Bears as my second loser. Now you can
How
say
could you?
there is some bias here because I am a Packers fan. I try and be as unbiased as possible because I think that's how you properly do things because I think being
Filthy.
biased towards things is honestly stupid. But
How could you?
the thing I didn't like about the Bears draft specifically was the ninth overall pick. Now,
Mm-hmm.
this is completely different from you, and that's how different drafting strategies form, and this is how different things happen. I liked Roma Dunze. I did have him as wide receiver 3 behind both Neighbors and Marvin Harrison Jr.
Number one.
But I have them in the same tier. So I'm saying he's still, one of the top guys in the
Mm-hmm.
in the draft. And I didn't have a problem with him going number 9. I thought the Bears could have gotten great trade capital for the number 9 pick, for Aroma Dunze, um, for somebody trading up for Brock Bowers, somebody trading up for the first defensive player off the board. Now, obviously, that comes with a grain of salt of it takes two to tango. There would have had to been a team willing to trade up to number 9, make the move. But I given they have Keenan Allen, I understand Keenan Allen's on a one year deal. I
Yeah.
understand they do have DJ Moore. They've got Cole Kmet. They've got DeAndre Swift. I thought they had enough weapons. I would have loved to see them trade down, take an offensive lineman, pick up another pick, maybe like a second or a third, maybe some more, get some more, either I just thought the wide receiver class was so deep that I would rather trade back from 9. Similarly to what Jacksonville did. So Jacksonville traded back 6 spots, picked up a
Mm-hmm.
ton of draft capital, and still got Brian Thomas Jr. I would have loved if the Bears found a trade partner in the teens, you still take your pick of Brian Thomas Jr., whoever you want, and then use the later capital to fill in some of the holes of the team. Because the team was bad last year. Like the team still, was bad enough to get the ninth overall pick. Now I understand they made a lot of trades in the offseason and are looking better, but I just thought that the ninth overall pick could have been used for more than just a single player, no matter how talented I think Roma Dunze is. So um, that leaves us with both of our, and we agree. I think both of us are going to agree on each one. But who was your biggest loser of the weekend?
So my biggest loser, I could have taken the low hanging fruit that is um
What I took.
anything going on in the lemon pepper capital of the world
Yep.
at Atlanta. Uh,
Oh, we'll get to that.
we'll get to that train wreck. Some things will be on fire. It's probably just Atlanta again. Um, but I feel the worst for Justin Jefferson. Um,
Don't feel too bad. He's about to get like 30-40 million dollars a year.
no, he's about to have some good times, but
Yeah.
he still has to. He's gonna have to get icy hot for his hands
From the
because his
getting thrown to
quarterback
him.
is JJ goddamn McCarthy.
Hey, it could be Sam Darnold.
It, it, it probably should be.
Look,
Um,
Sam Darnold loves our show because he loves seeing ghosts.
that's true. We are the number one.
Sam Darnold podcast.
We are the number one Sam Darnold podcast. I stand for my golden knight,
My glorious king.
my ginger king. Uh, all praise.
Hey, he filled in for like one game for the Niners last year, right?
Like he was the ultimate victory cigar for the 49ers
Oh
last year.
yeah.
You saw Sam Darnold and you're like, just here we go. But I do not like JJ McCarthy.
That makes two
I
of us.
do not understand why he went from a 5th round draft pick to the 12th pick in the draft. Or 10th pick in the draft, even worse.
Yep.
He is his qualities are he's a winner on a defensive based team, and he throws the ball hard.
You know who he reminds me of? He reminds
I
me
have
of
a ba-
he
I
reminds me
have
of
a
Trent
bad
Dilfer.
comp.
He reminds me of Trent Dilfer. You remember Trent Dilfer was like just good enough to win you a Super Bowl if he was like on the Ravens, who had like the best defense of all time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that feels like JJ McCarthy to me, where the Michigan team was so good, whoever at quarterback, as long as they didn't throw 4 interceptions in a game, you were going to win.
So I've got a really bad comp.
Is it a player currently playing?
No.
Okay. Were they drafted after 2000?
Yes.
Is it Mark Sanchez?
No.
What team they play for?
49ers.
It's not Alex Smith.
No.
It's not Jeff Garcia.
No.
It's not Brock Purdy.
No. The keywords is piss missiles.
Colin Kaepernick?
Colin fucking Kaepernick.
Really? That is such a weird comp. He doesn't have the movement
Because
though. That's what.
here's
Well, okay. Can we say like Colin Kaepernick if he lost 2 ACLs, like and he couldn't move?
correct.
Yeah,
I'm
because
mainly talking about his arm.
as someone that watched Colin Kaepernick run over the Packers in a playoff game for like 204 yards or something stupid.
Yeah, that's a fever dream that we all remember.
I will
But
have much more respect for that man and as an NFL player than most people will.
so he only has one mode, and that's me
Safe.
throw ball fast.
Yeah.
Me throw ball hard.
Yeah.
I don't care if it's a touch pass, a screen pass, or like 35 yards down the field on a dime. He is throwing it as hard as he can.
Well, yeah.
There is
We
no
agree.
off switch. There's no train switch. There is nothing. Yes, he plays in Michigan and knows Minnesota.
Sure, he could play the Colts probably. Like,
Whoopity doo doo da da. He has done nothing in college that is impressive. He played off a really good defense, and Harbaugh's insane.
Now, to be fair, he is going to the best situation that one of the quarterbacks that was going to be drafted in the first round is
I
going
think he
to.
has the best wide receiver.
I think
I
he
don't
has
think
the best
it's.
coach. I think he has the best wide receiver. And those matter. I think those matter. Now, I hated their second first round pick more than JJ McCarthy. That has nothing to do with Dallas Turner. I think Dallas Turner was good enough to go before. I think they traded into 17 with Jacksonville, as I mentioned earlier.
Yeah, I think I am fine with it just because it's.
Trade. Correct me if I'm wrong. They traded a 2 and a 3 this year and a 4 and a 5 next year to move up 6 spots.
I think it was something like that. Yeah.
That is absurd. Let me just look at it just to make sure I
They also
am not.
drafted a kicker, so
Excuse me, they did not trade a second. So they traded a fifth rounder, a first and a fifth this year, and they
mhm.
traded a third and a 4 next year. Um, I just hate that as a team building thing. Now, it's interesting because the whole idea of picking JJ McCarthy is you
Mhm.
think you're ready to compete because McCarthy's going to be stable enough and the rest of your team is good enough. But to me, it's just not. You lost Daniil Hunter. The rest of that division is stacked. The Lions, the Packers, and now the Bears.
Like if I was in some sort of like deep forest Greek tent,
Okay, I like where this
I
is
would
going.
pick the Bears over the Minnesota Vikings for third.
I think the Vikings might get last in the division,
I
and
think
you
there's a strong case they will.
traded future capital to do it.
I
Like
think there's a non 0% chance they trade Jefferson at the deadline.
I think that would be career suicide for the GM, so they're not going to do it. However, I don't disagree with your take.
It's like,
Now,
what's the Minnesota schedule next? Has that been released yet?
so I mean, well, think about it this way: Minnesota has a third place schedule, right? Because the Packers and the Lions both made the playoffs. So it shouldn't be too bad, realistically.
So they're
They play the NFC East,
uh
right?
do they have the schedule out
Yeah,
yet?
they don't have
They don't
specific
have.
mat they don't have specific weeks, but they have what teams you play.
Let's see what we got here. All right. So we've got, of course, Bears, Packers, Detroit times two.
Which do they win two of those games?
I'd say two
Two?
if they're lucky.
Yeah. You probably
So
beat the Bears and probably split with the Packers because they always split with the Packers.
so that'd be three
No, two.
to
One win
what
over the
beating the
Bears,
Bears.
one win over the Packers.
Well, they play them twice.
Yeah, I think they lose to the Bears in Chicago.
Okay. Then they also play Arizona, Houston,
Probably lose both those. Arizona's going to be good this year.
Colts,
Probably lose that.
49ers,
You're going to lose that.
Jets,
Winnable.
Falcons,
You're going to, well, Kirk Cousins revenge game. Don't know.
Jacksonville.
Is it in Duval?
It's in Jacksonville.
Yeah, I would take Jacksonville.
Rams at Rams.
Take the Rams.
Seahawks.
I take Seattle. Although if Seattle's in Minnesota, it's better for
It's in
Minnesota.
Seattle.
Oh God. No,
Tennessee at Tennessee, and then
they'll win
Giants
that.
at Giants.
They could win those two.
So, but we're looking at like what, 5 wins?
Wow. When you put it like that, that's really bad. Yeah,
It's like, would
that's
you if
really
you
bad.
lose the first five? Are you trading Jefferson? Just kind of blow it up.
I don't know because I think the coach is pretty secure. I don't know about how secure the GM is. I know he's a pretty young GM.
Yeah, I can't
Um,
remember if he's new or not.
he's new-ish. He came in a couple of years ago, but um,
Hmm.
man, all of a sudden, I think the Vikings are not going to do good next year. Um, my number one team is the low-hanging fruit for the worst draft. It's the Atlanta Falcons, and they could have picked the seven best players after picking Michael Penix at 8, and I still would have given it an F because you are in the perfect position to go for it. Okay. The NFC has generally been weaker than the AFC, mostly due to quarterback play because there's no Mahomes, there's no Burrow, no Trevor Lawrence, no
Mhm.
Josh Allen, all these guys, Lamar Jackson. Um,
Yeah.
so CJ Stroud now, um, Justin Herbert. And in the NFC, there's just a bit more of a lack of talent top to bottom. Not only that, I would argue the NFC South is one of the weakest divisions in the league because the Saints are in cap hell. They're still trying to get out of it. And their team is
Yes.
okay. I think they have the worst coach in the league. I don't know why Dennis Allen has a job. Um,
Not wrong.
they, you have Tampa Bay, who overachieved last year, will probably be good but not great. Probably an 8 to 10 win team, realistically. And then you've got the Panthers, who look like they might have taken a draft bust if Bryce Young doesn't improve with the number one overall pick, and the rest of their team is garbage. So, who just traded Brian Burns for peanuts, by the way, to the Giants. Um, so you are in a perfect position to go all in. You signed Kirk Cousins to a 4-year deal. You are perfectly suited to make a run because once you get into the playoffs, anything can happen. Especially when you have a pretty whatever schedule. You know, you could probably win 5 games in your division alone. You know, although the Saints always play them tough. Um, And instead of taking Dallas Turner like everybody mocked, Roma Dunze, um, there was mentions of Brock Bowers going there to make the most crazy two tight end set ever with Kyle Pitts, all this stuff. You take Michael Penix, who I actually like Michael Penix. I would have loved for him to go to a spot where he could start to see how he could perform, like the Raiders, the Broncos. There's so many layers to how bad this pick was. The first layer is Kirk Cousins is obviously someone that cares about having comfort and sustainability because he goes to places with guaranteed money, like he did where he has fully guaranteed contract when he went to the Vikings. And then you just picked someone who, while Kirk Cousins is recovering from an ACL injury and is probably not going to OTAs, is going to be throwing crazy rockets down the field and get fans screaming for him to play instead of Kirk Cousins. You you sacrifice the ability to pick whatever defensive player you wanted. But more than that, there were reports out that 3 different teams, the Raiders, the Saints, and the Seahawks, all tried to trade up to 8 for Michael Penix, and the Falcons said no. So you gave up so much draft capital to take a player you hope never touches the field for you. Michael Penix is going to be, I believe, 24 when the season starts. So what you're telling me is when you can get off the Kirk Cousins contract, which by the way is in 2 years when all the guaranteed money is gone.
Yeah, it's essentially a 2-year
It's
contract.
essentially a 2-year deal. I get you're trying to do what the Packers did. But the Packers took Jordan Love when they were coming off a 13-win season. You took Michael Penix when you stunk. What are you? I just hate the pick. Now, don't get me wrong. They had
My
some okay picks later. Second round pick, Rook Arohoro. I think he's going to be a good player. But, like, what
so
are we
my
doing?
my counter is one, they clearly had Michael Penix as their number one player on the board overall.
But that's just wrong. Like, that's just wrong.
That was their number one dude. I
That's
think second of all, if you think he's that dude, and your quarterback's coming off an ACL injury who's 36,
if you thought he was that dude, you knew he was going to be there at 8. You don't give Kirk Cousins the deal. You sign Russell Wilson
that
to a
okay,
1-year deal.
I think that's more of the thing that should be things is not the pick yet. Okay, so yes, we can is why did you give Kirk Cousins 160 million or
I
whatever?
don't have a problem with Michael Penix being taken at number 8 because there were teams clearly willing to do that. I have a problem with Michael Penix being taken by a team that just spent $180 million on a quarterback that's going to be there for at least 2 years in a division that's winnable right now when your window's open while you have Drake London, Bijan Robinson, Kyle Pitts all on rookie deals. If you want to go all in on a rookie quarterback like the Niners tried to do with Trey Lance, I have no problem with that because you have one specific direction. If you have two directions in the NFL, you have no direction. I thought
Yes,
that
but
was,
I also wouldn't be surprised if Cousins doesn't come back well from the ACL or the Achilles, and then it just works out for them. They just go, okay,
but
that was dumb.
if you're not sure about Kirk Cousins ACL, trade for Sam Howell. Trade for Sam Howell, give up a 5th round pick, use your 8th overall pick on an impact player. You know what you could do? You could take an offensive lineman that protects his leg. You could take a wide receiver that makes it so he could dump the ball off faster so he doesn't get hit as much. But no,
I
you
also
took
think
Michael Penix.
that
Oh my god.
I also could see the Falcons being like, we're not going to be, because it is clear that the price of like what's the correct term for this? Like good bad quarterbacks is a top 12 pick. Like it used to
Sure.
be, oh, I'll hop at the end of the first round
Yep,
and
get the
I'll get a
5th year option
quarterback.
and it was fine, but ever since
And
Lamar
then
Jackson, it's just not happened.
every other team just went,
We're just
so
gonna take him.
no,
Yeah.
we're just gonna grab him
Again,
now.
for the record, I don't know how he would do it because it would require another player to get injured, which I would obviously never root for. I hope Michael Penix has a wonderful career. I hope he plays well. I hope he does well. I hope his family is living well. I hope everything's fine. But I thought that was the single worst pick in the draft, and I don't think anything comes close. The second worst thing I think happened in this draft was the Packers' inability to trade up for Cooper DeJean. And besides that, I think Michael Penix was by far the worst pick in the whole draft. But enough with the bad.
There's also
Into the
Bo
fun.
Nix.
I thought that was fine. They didn't move. That was their guy. I don't like Bo Nix as a quarterback, but I would rather you take your guy, not have to trade draft capital into a situation where he can play right
I just
away.
think they're gonna have a documentary just called The Peyton Files. And
Oh,
it's
Sean
just gonna
Payton.
be,
Yeah.
yeah, it's like, how much did you guys fuck this up
That
the
that
entire, it's gonna be like, do you guys remember when we traded away everything and sucked? It's like,
You know what the
yes,
worst part is? I care about
I
that
do.
team because I've lived in Denver and I want Troy Franklin to be a good player. And I don't want to watch that team. So I'm going to have to watch highlights basically. But in better news, we're going to move over to the bar. The bar is a recurring theme on this show. Is going to be the Bay Area report. We are both from the Bay Area. It's Bay Area
Time to have a
recap
seat.
rather. It's time to have a seat at the bar, and at this bar, we will be recapping the Bay Area. And first of all, we're going to talk about the San Francisco 49ers because obviously they had a busy and drama-filled weekend, which included not trading Brandon Ayuk or Deebo Samuel. Do you think that was the correct decision?
I Coming into this draft, I thought they were going to do something. I originally thought they were going to trade Ayuk. I didn't fully understand why. It's like I kind of get it from the standpoint of, we know next year you're going to pay Purdy. That's a conversation for another podcast. Is, do you pay Purdy? But that's a spicy
That's a
conversation.
spicy question.
It was, if you're keeping Purdy and paying him like $50 million a year, you're losing someone, at least one. Um, Outside of the people aging out like Kittle type things, like you're gonna lose, the good times are over when it comes to easy flexible cap.
Yeah, it's going to be like
And
Deebo,
it's like Debo or
Ayuk,
Ayuk has
Fred
always been the decision of
Warner.
which
Or
one's
Fred Warner
going.
got paid, right?
Fred Warner got paid, but you
Okay,
can still,
Hufanga is coming up on his deal too, and he's coming off
yes,
a devastating injury, so
they will probably not resign
probably.
Hufanga. But that's a couple years down the road. They, with Ayuk and Debo, you're just like, okay, what are they gonna do here? What are they gonna do here? And then like you hear all the rumblings, like, oh, Pittsburgh's Mike Tomlin looks exactly like Ayuk, their father and son. And I'm like, that
Oh
doesn't
no.
mean anything. Then Ayuk was like, I'm gonna be a millennial and tweet out weird symbols on
Yeah,
Instagram.
unfollow the Niners on
And
socials
like,
and stuff.
okay, we all know how this works. He's gonna get a deal in September or August, right around the end of training camp, and then he'll be fine. It's
Well,
how it
what's
happened with Debo, happened with Kittle, happened with Bosa. It's just how it works.
What's
And then
what's
there was a lot
interesting,
more rumbling from like Mike Silver and a couple other local people were like, "No, there's some smoke here."
yeah,
I'm like,
Diana
"Oh
Rossini
fuck,
tweeted out
shit."
day of the draft or day before the draft that there was teams in the top 10 talking to the Niners about Ayuk. Now, obviously, that wouldn't be a straight up deal. The Niners would probably have to kick in like a third or a fourth or something to make the deal work, whatever.
Yeah,
But I always thought Ayuk was the player to get traded because Ayuk is the player that is more valuable to other teams because Debo is the most valuable to the Niners because of his unique play style. He wouldn't be as, I think, utilized, and I don't think his market would be as robust as Ayuk. Now, they didn't do anything, and instead they picked Slicky Ricky Pearsall from Florida, who
Slick
I
Rick.
is
God.
interesting because again, the theme, at least for me, for this podcast and the NFL draft, has been the wide receiver depth in this class was insane. The wide receivers in this draft were so good, and you're gonna take one at 31 to add to an offense that's already insane. You're not gonna take Cooper DeJean for your back half of your defense. You're not going to take Kool-Aid. You're not going to try and trade ahead of Baltimore, take Nate Wiggins. You're not going to try and do any of that. You're going to take a wide receiver. To me, it felt like a luxury pick. I didn't love the 49ers decision, and I had
I
them as my loser before we discussed having them on the bar, obviously. But that's how bad I thought their draft was.
so for me, it tells like it's very interesting looking at what Kyle Shanahan thinks they lost the Super Bowl because of. They've got Ricky Slick Rick,
Yeah.
super quick guy.
Yep.
Later in the draft, Isaac Guerrero, the fastest running back.
Yep.
They also
Up
got
with
Jake
Jonathan.
Cowing,
He
another
has like
slot guy
some
who's huge for
that running
breaking.
back. His metrics were the same as like he was one of 5 players ever to have like be like over this weight, be under this speed, and have this burst score. And it was like Jonathan Taylor, Saquon Barkley, Adrian Peterson, and somebody else. And it's like, oh
Do
my god,
do not be surprised if he is your starting running back in like 2 years. Mainly just because, and you watch the film of him, and he does exactly what it says on the tin. And it's like the 49ers, how they do their gap schemes and everything is they basically go, I Kyle Shanahan goes, I am smarter than them.
yeah.
There's a hole right here. It doesn't you don't see that hole, but there's a hole right there.
To be fair,
Hit that hole.
I have
And
hated
this pick says, "Oh, dude, I'm gonna hit that hole."
I have hated the Niners drafts for like 3 years now. I have. They've
Yes,
also. I feel like they've drafted a running back every year. Like they took
they
some.
have.
Like it just feels weird. Like at that point, couldn't you just like get a rental somewhere for like an aging player that could like do something similar? Like
So the biggest thing with the 49ers is two from when it comes to running backs is they use them and they abuse them. They
sure,
need every running back they can get. Especially with a couple of their backups are coming off of contracts next year. There's going to be some holes to fill.
Elijah
Um,
Mitchell, right?
Elijah Mitchell and Mason both are coming up after this year. Um, I the
Didn't they?
49ers are
Didn't they
really
take a kid
bad
in the
with middle
second
round.
round? Didn't they
Who?
take a second round running back like last year?
They took a third last year and a third the year
They took a
before.
kid out of Ohio State, right?
Yeah, Trey Sermon traded him to the
Thank you.
Eagles, and then they took the running back from LSU, and then they released him, and then he was signed by the Eagles.
Like they picked Brandon Ayuk, good pick. They picked Debo, good pick. George Kittle, Fred Warner, Hufanga, good picks.
They do not do
But
well in the first round.
holy moly, they do some stuff that hurts my brain.
They do some really bad.
Just picking Jake
I
Moody, who couldn't even hit the broadside of a barn last year. Like, what are we
I
doing?
like their first round pick just from the standpoint of this. There's a lot of wrong wide receivers for the 49ers. Like a good example is Xavier Worthy is
Sure,
probably not a 49ers wide receiver.
sure.
The 49ers are not good Devo wide receivers, and they also basically say you are an offensive lineman until you get to be a wide receiver.
Yeah, you have to block and show you can
You
block
have
to
you
get
have
on
to
the field.
block,
Yeah.
but it's not even just like being good at blocking. It's like you have to aggressively want to feed off of someone's innards
We'll put it
as
this
a
way.
wide receiver. You're just
Where do
like,
you think if the Niners didn't take him at 31, where was Ricky Pearsall going?
I think he was going like 34 or 35th overall.
Okay, I thought he would go give or take 40. So
I
five, six
There was
picks
a
in the
lot of
seven,
people,
eight picks.
from what I've been talking with people, they had a whole bunch of he was like that pick where you watch the film and you go, this is good. And then you watch the film for like 35 hours and you're just like, this guy's generational. Like
I felt like there was other needs and there was other talent available at those
I
positions of need.
I think this is one of those picks of um
It comes off as we're smarter than you to me,
correct, and that's how most of the 49ers
which is
operations
how Kyle
work.
Shanahan works. But like, I just I would have liked this deal better if they also traded Ayuk or Debo, because it would have been less redundant to me. But this feels redundant.
Yes, but I think that that's going to happen anyway, so they're just like, this is they it, my guess is there was probably like three, specifically the offensive lineman the Packers took. There was probably like
Yeah.
three offensive linemen that they were like, we'll take a Trent Williams replacement.
Well, I also hate the Packers not taking Graham Barton, by the way, but that's a whole another rant for another day.
But
The Packers
though,
are like
and
the
then
Niners in the first
especially
round.
I think you judge that
Incredible.
more in the second round, where it was clear that the to everyone that they were drafting the offensive tackle out of Washington,
And they didn't move.
and they didn't. And it was also one of those things where people coming into this draft were basically said, "Hey, 49ers, uh, you're not signing 9 rookies. They're not going to make the team. 9 rookies aren't going to make the team."
Which
And
is
then
why
and then the
I hated the
49ers
Packers.
said, "I think we'll stay pat."
No, that's why I hated what the Packers did, is because the Packers had opportunities to move up for players of quality in positions of need they had with 13 freaking draft picks, and there's not enough of a gap of talent on the team that 13 players are going to make the team. So I would rather trade a fifth and a seventh to move up to get Cooper DeJean. Uh, uh, I would have rather
Trust
them
me, I'm quite happy with my white
trade
boy
in
secondary.
trade in front of the Steelers to get Fatanu. Like, there's so many different things I wish the Packers did, but I'm a Packers fan and I'm burned every year by what they do in the first round somehow. So
That is your fate. So
so we will normally spend more time in the bar discussing the San Francisco Giants, the San Jose Sharks, the Oakland A's until they get kicked out, um, the Golden State Warriors. But I think mostly it's going to be the NFL draft today. I think the quick hits are the Giants look okay. Blake Snell stinks. He's on the IL.
Jung Hoo Lee,
Jung
Jung
Lee's good.
Hoo Lee,
That's a good player.
Jung Hoo Lee.
Matt Chapman's been good for them.
Well, we
Patrick,
don't look at his offensive numbers, but we do expect that.
yeah, we knew to expect that. Brandon Crawford in a Cardinals jersey is disgusting.
It is disgusting, but Farhan made the right call, but it's still disgusting.
Yeah, I don't disagree with it. Quick hit on the San Jose Sharks. They fired their coach. Hopefully, they get the number one overall pick. They need it. Um,
Okay, all I'm gonna say is when the Sharks get the third pick, and then the
they pick the
damn
wrong guy
like
again.
Blackhawks or the Oilers
Get the
get the
number one
top
pick again.
pick,
Yeah,
we
I'm gonna be
we
pissed.
burn down the
Yeah,
NHL building. We just
yeah. Well, didn't we not pick that
but
Russian guy that we should have picked last year because we were trying to
uh
compete now?
yes, but the guy they did pick, Will Smith,
He's like good.
looks very good.
Okay, good. Thank God.
He's basically been dominating college at a disgustingly high pace this
Good.
year.
Good. We need him. Our
And
team stinks.
looking like a star.
And we
Last
traded
thing on the
people that
Sharks, because
we traded
we
one of
won't.
them to the Golden Knights because we're stupid.
Yeah, I traded Hurdle.
Yeah.
But the one thing, Celebrini
Mm-hmm.
is the player the Sharks want.
Uh huh.
He is a stud.
Uh huh.
He also his dad is the medical provider for the or like the medical trainer for the goddamn Warriors. Just bring him home. It's
Just bring him home.
simple. Just give us the
And
first pick. They have a 25% chance, and it
s-
sucks.
speaking
So
of the
there's no way they're
Warriors,
gonna win it.
uh, Klay Thompson went over 10 in what could be his final game as a Warrior.
It's
Um,
gonna be weird.
Klay Thompson is probably my favorite Golden State Warrior of all time. But as you know, I'm someone that's big on defense. Even in the NFL, almost all my favorite players of all time are defensive players. Um,
Defense.
and I am torn because I don't think you should pay Clay a lot, but he's kind of a symbol of the team. Um,
I think the big thing with that is it's more the question of are you going extreme
yeah.
or are you just kind of running it back? Because if you're just running it back, yeah, give throw 25 million at Clay and just be like, here you go,
Well, the
whatever. We're
rumor
just
is the team that's always connected to him recently is the Magic.
the Magic,
Uh,
which I think the Magic are going to go over for Monk from Sacramento.
that makes sense.
Makes a lot more sense to me.
Yeah. But they do
But
want they kind of run tall lineups though, so that would make more sense with Clay.
they do,
Like
but
if you run a lineup with whatever point guard because they have 17 of them, and then you could put Clay at the 2 on that team and then run Suggs, Isaac, Carter Jr. That team is tall.
it's
That team is
tall.
tall. Um, I
Tall.
don't know. It's going to be interesting. Warriors are always a destination recently for big name stars. So what's interesting is, do the Suns blow it up? Does Milwaukee blow it up? Does
I'm
does
just saying. Oh,
LeBron look for somewhere else?
you
Like,
just got to go get Bronny in the transfer portal.
that's
Just bring
true.
him up to Cal. He'll be okay. He can go play with
What will be interesting
all those
is
folk.
Kawhi signed an extension, right?
I think so.
I'm curious. Now the Warriors have to be very specific with how they do their trades because they're over the tax, which means you can't
Yeah, they're
do
kind of
trades and
fucked with the
stuff.
tax.
The question is, can you package Clay, like a sign and trade of Clay plus stuff? And by stuff, I mean like good stuff. I'm talking like Moody. I really wouldn't want to trade Kaminga, but someone like that. Like, could you trade Moody, Pajemski, Clay in a sign and trade to the Clippers for Paul George in a sign and trade?
Uh,
Because he's the type of player they need. They need someone who can take the ball handling off of Steph if need be. He's smart enough to play in their offense. He's a 3 and D wing. Like, he's got everything they want.
I think he's too old.
Probably, but
I
I
think
feel like
this
they're
play.
gonna.
I think this playoff is the playoffs that's um like the Simpsons meme is just like it's just it's all the old NBA superstars laughing at the end of the bus, just going, "I'm in danger," and it's just Ant at the front of the bus, just like with a fucking
An SGA and Vic.
he's there with like the freaking lunch lady. He's like
I
dunking on
mean,
people.
if we're talking about it, let's talk about it. The question is okay. There's two different questions. What should the Warriors do, and what will the Warriors do in terms of their timeline? Will they mortgage assets in an attempt to, because Curry's probably going to age gracefully because of the way he plays. Now losing a step will hurt because of how much movement he does and things like that. But his 3 point shooting's like what? He's going to be like the best JJ Redick on crack at like 40.
Yeah,
Like, so he's going to age pretty gracefully. Do you trade pieces like Moody, Kaminga, Pajemski, TJD, try and get a superstar? Do you move Draymond Green? Do you try and get under the luxury tax for at least 1 year to reset your apron thing so that you can actually make proper deals next year? Like,
I think I think that they will trade Kaminga, but I also don't.
Is Kaminga
No.
good enough to be the centerpiece of a star deal? I don't know.
Yes.
I think so.
I think so, but I think it requires. My question is, can they get kind of pry Sengun from Houston?
Oh my god, I'm so mad they didn't take Sengun during that draft.
Yeah, like I've been hearing like all of the Turkish media is just like, get him out, get him out, get him out, and
Really?
I'm
That's
just
surprising. The Rockets are better this year.
yeah, but that's they played a lot when he was hurt, and that's when they had their run.
Sure.
So a lot of people are like, oh, what if we got rid of him? And it's
Can
like,
you
okay, just
imagine if they took Franz Wagner and Sengun in that draft? Now, to be fair, I think Moses Moody's crazy underrated because whenever he plays, he's just good. But he
the
never plays.
Moody is this weird case of
Don't even talk to me about James Wiseman.
Moody is this weird case of he is the consummate pro that I kind of need him to be a bit more of a punk ass because like he is being the perfect teammate where I'm just like,
Well, that's what happened with
bruh.
Kaminga, right? Like he basically leaked to the media. He was like pissed that he wasn't getting playing time, and then Steve Kerr was like, "Well, shit. I guess I'm gonna play this guy."
Well, it wasn't even a well shit. It was more just a like, okay, let's actually figure out what the problem is, and they still haven't fully figured it out. The same thing with like Andrew Wiggins of like, what's actually wrong with you?
It's
And
it's
when it
weird because I don't know if
because
Kaminga fits the way they want to play. Now, I know you need some level of athleticism, but like he he's kind of like better Andre Iguodala during those years. Like
the question is he going to be um I forgot the name of oh, that's what it is he going to be Danny Green, or is he going to be like a
DeMar DeRozan.
DeMar, like is he going to be one of those things where is he super super good but like the stats are maybe a little hollow like during his
Yeah.
thing, or like he's a quality starter but just kind of there. I think the biggest problem with the Kaminga debate is clear from this playoffs and from this year. You have to get younger to deal with some of the craziness that's going on, and you have to get more athletic, and you have to be able to like be athletic on both sides of the ball. And the problem is that Kaminga is your best trade asset and also your best athletic piece.
I mean,
But
put it this way:
I think
if
it
you
comes to it's
flip,
like
so if you put, so let me give you a trade package. Okay, Kaminga, Moses Moody, or GP2. Um,
well, I think GP2 has a player option this year for 8 million, but there's a chance he may decline it and then come back for less. Even though it doesn't make sense, but there's
so
whisperings he
let's
may
put it
do that.
Moody, Kaminga, and the Andrew Wiggins contract, and a first round pick. What tier of player does that get you?
Um
Because Kaminga's
uh
good, but Wiggins' contract is not good.
Wiggins' contract is not a positive. That's a
It's a negative. So I think you get, but you're also throwing in Moody and a first.
um I think that's probably like
I just want Paul George, man. Is that so bad?
yes.
It's probably too old. I don't know.
He
There's
is
like a,
probably too old.
I don't know. It's weird because you also got to think about what players are going to be available, right? Because I don't think you want to trade for Donovan Mitchell. It's like a weird fit. I mean, you could. He's athletic. Like,
It's more. Do you want another 2-3 guard, or are you looking for a big man? Is the entire debate?
you want a three. The problem is you want a 3 or 4, which is exactly what you're trading when you trade away Kuminga and Wiggins. You
Yes,
want Andrew Wiggins to be Andrew Wiggins from 2022 is basically what you want.
yes, but we also don't know if that's just the weird outlier that happened once and
Well,
doesn't exist
he's had
anymore.
back-to-back years where he's missed prolonged periods of time due to personal stuff, which I don't super want to get into, but also like it's
Yeah.
seemingly clearly affected him. Because I don't think his talent just went away that quickly, and I don't think him giving a shit about basketball went away that quickly, even though he kind of struggled with it to start.
Mm-hmm.
But now the perfect player would have been if Minnesota stunk this year to try and get Cat. But Minnesota's really good this year. And all of a sudden the Gobert trade went from an F to like at least a C plus moving forward. But um,
Just like it's a bad one, but
I don't know. If that's a great question actually for our viewers. If you can think of a trade that would help the Warriors, potentially moving Kuminga, potentially moving Moody, I would say everybody's available except Steph Curry because that's how it should be. Um,
basically, yep.
let me know what your trades are in the comments. That's it for us today. This has been our first episode of the PTS, where the Poulters talk sports. My name is Paul. That is Daniel, and we will see you guys on the next one. Catch you
See
later.
ya.